How many of you are old enough to remember the days of the mashup era? Show of hands. Not many. That's about what I expected. Well, for those of you who don't know, back in the early 2000s, developers were mixing and matching all sorts of APIs to make these cool, unexpected apps. It was such a fun and exciting time in web development. One of the most iconic mashups was Google Maps and Craigslist. You'd search for real estate, and instead of just getting a boring list, you'd see all of the real estate mapped out for you. This mashup was called Housing Maps, and it turned basic search results into a visual, interactive experience. Now, I know that this doesn't seem revolutionary now, but back then, this totally blew our minds. You see, the developer who created this did so before the Google Maps API was even a thing. It was literally just a regular dude named Paul mashing things up together. And everything was really close back then. So being able to pull from not one but two different vendors to create something new was sick. So developers started mashing Google Maps with all kinds of things like crime data, local events and concerts, and even restaurant reviews. And this excitement and demand is actually what led Google to release the Maps API. They realized the potential of having developers build on top of their platform. And once Google opened the door, everyone followed. Other major companies started providing APIs too. And it was the beginning of the API economy as we know it today, where open APIs became the norm and developers could build ecosystems around popular services. Another iconic mashup was Twitter and Flickr. So you could tweet out your latest photos right from the Flickr app. And this was before Twitter had built-in photo sharing. So this was a game changer for social updates. And it wasn't long before developers started mashing YouTube with Twitter as well to enable video posts. Now, developers got really creative. There was a Netflix and a Rotten Tomatoes mashup that showed movie ratings right from your Netflix queue. Back when Amazon was a virtual bookstore, there was one mashup that connected your Amazon purchases with library things to help you organize your book collection. There were even mashups that scanned your iTunes library to let you know when your favorite artists were coming to town. What a time. There was no shortage of innovation and fun. Now, you may be wondering to yourself, well, if this was so amazing, why didn't it last? Fair question. So let's talk about a couple of reasons why this kind of fizzled out. One of the biggest issues with the mashups was maintenance. APIs would change, they'd get deprecated, or sometimes even just disappear. One day your mashups worked perfectly, and the next they were completely broken. And keeping all of those changes became a headache, especially since most of these mashups were side projects for developers, right? They get excited about an idea, they'd hack something together, put it out into the world. But because these projects were born out of curiosity rather than commitment, they lacked that long-term support. Well, I really missed the creativity of those days, which is why I am so excited about MCP. So it's bringing back that same energy of the mashup era, but in a way that could actually work long term. So MCP stands for the Model Context Protocol, and it's an open standard that lets AI agents talk to different APIs, tools, and data sources in this clean and consistent way. Think of it like a universal adapter. Instead of custom coding every integration, you just plug in these things called MCP servers, which are basically wrappers around APIs. And the agent just knows how to interact with them. And this setup makes it super easy to build mashups because everything just kind of works together right out of the box. So like I said, MCPs work with AI agents. And an AI agent is a system that takes action on your behalf. So think about AI chatbots like ChatGPT, for example. They're conversational and they tell you how to do something. Well, AI agents take this a step further by actually doing the thing. So they can make API calls, they can generate and execute code, and they can trigger other actions. Now, MCP isn't a requirement for AI agents. In fact, there are many companies that are building closed agents that work specifically within their apps, which is cool, right? You describe what you want to do in natural language and the AI handles it. So there's no need to kind of hunt around for settings. That's extremely helpful. But the moment you need to bring in anything outside of that application, you're out of luck. So that's the beauty of MCP. With MCP, agents aren't boxed into an application. They can connect to any tool or service that exposes themselves via an MCP server, okay? So kind of like the mashup era, but instead of wiring everything together manually, the agent figures it out and does the work for you. We're back, baby. Fun, fast, creative integrations, but now much easier to create. So Anthropic launched MCP in November 2024, and my company, Block, as well as a few other companies, helped out with this spec. Let me tell you, developers are hyped.
Everyone is talking about MCPs. It's gone completely viral.
The hype is real. And a lot of this is because MCPs are completely open. Anyone can build an MCP server, even if you're not the provider of that API. There's SDKs to do so in TypeScript, Java, Kotlin, Rust, Python, and Microsoft just released one last week in C#. The servers themselves are open source. They're also LLM agnostic, so they can work with any model, and they're agent agnostic, so they can work with any AI agent that also adheres to the MCP standard. So in less than 6 months, there's already a massive ecosystem of MCPs, over 3,000 of them, in fact. And the wild part is that only about 200 of those are from the official vendors of those APIs. The rest are made by everyday developers, folks just like my guy Paul from the Mashup days. Developers everywhere are seeing the potential and jumping on board. And as go the developers, so do the companies. So in the last month or so, we've been seeing companies launch official MCP servers because they realize we're doing this with or without them. So they might as well join the party. And the biggest tale was OpenAI adopting MCP rather than solely relying on a closed proprietary solution. And MCP has caught the attention of Google's CEO as well. So like I said, the hype is real. So let's look at some fun MCP mashups. I'm going to use Goose, which is an open source AI agent that's built as an MCP client. What that means is that it works with any of the 3,000 plus MCP servers out there. It lets you choose whichever LLM you want. So we're really seeing the full potential of MCP here. So let's create one of the most famous mashups of the early 2000s, but with MCPs. So I asked Goose to make an interactive map of restaurants nearby, and it first uses the Google Maps MCP to get the theater's location, and then to also search for nearby restaurants. Once it has this data, it uses the developer MCP to write the web page. Then it uses the computer controller MCP to open it in the browser. And there you have it. We have an interactive map of nearby restaurants, all done in about 30 seconds. So with just one natural language prompt, Goose mashed up several tools. We had the Google Maps MCP to get the data. We had the OpenStreetMap API and Leaflet.js to provide the map tiles. We had the developer MCP to create the web page and the computer controller MCP to open it in the browser. This is the modern day mashup, combining data from various APIs and local tools without needing to manually wire them together. Let's look at another mashup. So here's a Figma design. To access this from my AI agent, I need to add the Figma MCP. So I'm going to install this and provide it with my Figma Access token. I also have a couple of other MCPs enabled, such as developer and computer controller. So let's make a mashup that asks Goose to take the Figma design and use the developer MCP to actually create the website using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. Within less than a minute, Goose has mashed together these two MCPs to complete my task. Now let's mash it with the computer controller MCP, and we're going to have the agent open the website for us. And as you can see, the site looks just like the design. So with my MCPs, the agent handles combining the tools, integrating the services, and getting them working together. And this integration isn't something that I need to maintain. At any given time, I can just ask my agent to do something like this, and even if any of these MCPs change, my agent will grab the latest version and figure out how to work with it. This is why I'm so excited about MCPs. They're dynamic, they're flexible, and they're just plain fun. Now let's see what else we can do with MCPs to simplify our developer lives. How about setting up a new project, which is a practical task for any developer, right? So I want to set up this Get diagram project locally, and it has an extensive stack complete with front-end, back-end, database, deployment, you name it. There are great instructions here on how to clone the repo, install the dependencies, configure the environment, spin up containers, start the database. But y'all, this is a lot of manual work, and I'd rather spend my time on better things. So I'm going to give Goose this repo and have it do it for me. So Goose is using the GitHub MCP to get instructions from the README file, goes on to clone the repo, checks if PMPM is installed, which it isn't, so Goose takes care of that for me, then installs the dependencies, sets up the required environment variables, attempts to spin up Docker, but notices that Docker isn't running. So it opens Docker, and I get a prompt to authenticate, which I don't mind doing manually because I'm not giving these AI agents my passwords, okay? So great, Goose notices Docker is running, continues working. Its next step is to start the database. So Goose notices that the database isn't set up yet, and it tries to run the script to start it, but it runs into a snag because the database needs a password. So Goose generates a random password so that it continues its work, and now it has the database running. Last step is to start the front-end server. So I'm gonna go ahead and test Goose's work by checking localhost in a browser. We'll open this up, and voila, the environment is successfully set up in less than 2 minutes, I might add. And Goose finishes off by letting me know the ports that everything is running on, and also tells me I'll need to add some API keys to the .env file, which it was unable to access because I restricted this file in something called Goose Ignore, something like Git Ignore. So with the GitHub and the developer MCP mashup, we're able to automate common developer tasks on the fly. So we've seen some cool mashups, but I want us to take a step back and look at how all of this actually works. So this is a really simple example of an MCP server. There's an official TypeScript SDK available in the Model Context Protocol GitHub org. However, community members have been making these fast MCP SDKs that make MCP development even simpler. So we create an MCP server instance and give it a name and a version. And this step is basically setting up your server's identity. Next, you're going to want to add tools. Now, tools are one of the most important aspects of agentic AI because AI agents are able to execute those API calls via tool calling. So we add a name and description for the tool. Y'all, please do not foobar this, okay? Because this gives the agent the context about the tool, and that's how it's able to figure out if this specific tool would be useful for whatever task that it's trying to complete. Next are the parameters. Just like a function, if you want a tool to do something, you need to provide arguments in many cases. So this is specifying that 2 numbers are needed when calling this tool. And then you provide a body specifying what happens when this tool is called, okay? And you can add as many of these tools as you need to. So here's a tool within the GitHub MCP that fetches the latest commit message for a given owner in a repo. And here's what's going on behind the scenes. So we have the user, which is you, the agent, which is an MCP client like Goose, which has access to tools that are a part of the installed MCP servers. And then we have the LLM, which makes decisions. So the user gives the agent a natural language prompt, like asking Goose to set up a project. Sounds simple enough, but if we really think about it, there's a few steps like setting up the directory, initializing the repo, creating the README, and then committing these changes back. So the agent takes the user prompt, sends it to the LLM, along with a list of the available tools. So the list of tools are from all of the MCPs that are enabled. So this list can be quite long, and many of them might not be relevant to the task. So as a user, you can add as many of these MCPs as you want, but don't have them all enabled at the same time, okay? Because every MCP can have multiple tools, and then giving the LLM a gigantic list of tools, some of which can even overlap, this can cause some confusion, it could slow up your response time, and also eat up your LLM tokens. So instead, when you start a session, enable the MCPs that you think might be relevant. Now, the LLM interprets the prompt, evaluates that list of tools, and then decides which tool call should be made and shares that decision with the agent. Now, here's where those tool descriptions from the MCP come in quite handy, right? This is giving the LLM enough context to make the decision about whether this tool should be used for the task. And then the agent executes the tool and then informs the LLM of the result and also updates the user on what it's doing. Now, that was just one step of the task. Remember, there's a few steps to set up the repo. So this loop is going to continue until the task is completed. And the beauty here is that you don't have to worry about how all of this gets stitched together, right? The LLM will dynamically choose the right tools, and the agent manages the entire process. So there's a lot of places where you can find directories of MCPs, or as I like to call them, the MCP toy stores, because I quite literally feel like a kid in the toy store, in a candy store when I go browsing for MCPs. The first directory was the official MCP repo. So they launched with a handful of reference implementations like File System, GitHub, Google Drive, Slack, and so on. But this directory is not updated often. So while it was the official list back in November, it's become outdated as community members have made more sophisticated directories, like Glamour AI. So they have a report card feature, which I really like. So I go here when I need to suss out an MCP. It'll let me know if the server is secure, if it's of high quality, and if it's licensed appropriately. And this report card is regenerated anytime there's a change on the repo for that MCP. Post MCP is my favorite. So I love how clean the UX is, and you can see some indicators of the popularity of a given MCP by the number of downloads and the GitHub stars. And then Block is working with Pulse MCP on an official MCP registry to serve as this unified collection or catalog of MCP servers, complete with the metadata, the versioning, the security insights. With MCPs, we're bringing back that creative spark from the early 2000s, but in a way that's practical for modern development. Whether it's for productivity, for creativity, or just plain fun, the flexibility of MCP means that you can do more with less effort. And the coolest part is that it's not just the big companies driving this. Developers everywhere are building and sharing their own MCP servers, so there's always something new to try out. So if this got you curious, I encourage you to give it a try. We are having an absolute blast mixing and matching MCPs. You can start by choosing an MCP client as your AI agent. Of course, I recommend Goose because it's open source. You can use any LLM you want. It's good for more than just coding, and it comes with a couple of built-in MCP servers that you can start using right away. Then you should explore the MCP directories or the toy stores, so you'll find thousands of MCPs already available right now. And if you can't find what you're looking for, you can always create it yourself with one of the SDKs. So go mash things up, make something fun, and be sure to share it with the community. Thank you so much.